It says that we are going live, and I am checking on that. If we are, welcome everyone. We're going live on the Facebook. Kia's here, Kathy's here. We got more on the way. It does look like we're live. Let me turn off that sound. It will let me. It does look like we're live. There we go. We're going to talk about Lucifer tonight. Is Lucifer Satan or what? So that keeps coming up, and I haven't done a study in a while on it. And I revamped a bit of a presentation for you to show you tonight, Kathy, and I wanted you and Kia and the rest of you to have a chance to discuss it. Another blow to biblical illiteracy out there, eh? All right. All right. Well, we're good to go, except we ain't got Gino. Okay, let's do this, Kathy. Let's do this, Kia, and Patricia will be here shortly. And I don't know if Mike's coming. I don't know about Dale. I know that Heather is at another event. So we'll just go. There's Gino. All right. Let's do this thing. You there, Gino? I'm sharing the screen. And there we have Lucifer. Let's do a slideshow from the beginning if it will let me. I'm pressing the button. Maybe move this over here. I don't know where to move that. Hey, Gino, how are you?
What's up?
Not much. Well, you talked about angels this morning, and there's I guess there's not been any doubt in most of your parishioners' minds over the years about Lucifer being another name for Satan and Lucifer being a fallen angel, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, we were talking about
We've
where
heard
that
that our
come
whole
from.
lives.
Yeah. And where's that come from?
Mama told me. My
Yeah.
Sunday school teacher told me.
That's what the preacher said.
Preacher said it.
Okay.
It came from Enoch.
Yeah, we got to go back. We keep blaming Enoch, but he's got a lot. He's got plenty of blame to go around. That book of Enoch, which is not in your Bible. Okay, look over to the left. You're looking at Lucifer on the left. At the bottom on the ground there, you have the silhouette of an astronomical observatory with the moon, crescent moon, just to the right of it at sunset. And above it, there are lots of stars, but there are two planets. The brightest one, the brightest quote unquote star that you see, that's Venus, the one above it, Jupiter. Venus is the morning star. Venus is Lucifer. But since you believe it's Satan, probably, and have been told it all your life, well, maybe we should look at where we get the name Lucifer, and it's not Enoch. So let's look at where it comes from. So the next slide. This is the only time in the Bible, the only verse that this Lucifer thing is found. So let's look at the only one time, and using King James Version, because that's the one that uses the word Lucifer. It's not the only one, but it's the main one. Others copied from it. So, how thou art fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations. O Lucifer and O day star, or O son of the morning is how King James has it. Come in, Patricia. We're ready for you.
You are.
Yep. Lucifer is waiting. He's right over here. He's right over here on the PowerPoint.
He's no match for me.
Pleased to meet you. Wanted to guess your name.
Gina said, pleased to meet you. Can you guess my name? Woo, woo.
Son of the morning.
Yeah, I know a little Rolling Stones, not much.
Oh, Lord.
So this is the only verse. This is the King James Version, which is an 1611 translation. It's quite old. It reads, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning!" Exclamation point. How? Oh, how thou art fallen. You hear him saying? Isaiah saying, oh, how you've fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. How art thou cut down from the ground, which didst weaken the nations? I would back up just one to point out that that's not a star, that's the planet Venus.
Mhm.
That's Lucifer. But if you want to believe that Lucifer is another name for Satan, you can. I'm going to show you that I don't believe that that is what is intended. This is the only verse where it happens.
Are you saying the star's name is Lucifer?
The star is called in the King James Version Lucifer, yes. So, the use of an exclamation mark, you all know how to use one. C is the correct answer. How bright you are. How you have fallen, O day star. It's supposed to be used with an exclamation, even though there aren't exclamation points in Hebrew. There's no punctuation in the ancient languages for the most part. So these are two exclamations, and I'm changing to the New King James. This is the same verse, Isaiah 12. How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. How you are cut down to the ground, you who weakened the nations. So we've got falling in both situations. One is a falling star and one is like a falling tree. You are cut to the ground. You are hewn. Yeah. So we have two tasks quickly before we get to our discussion so that you'll understand these key terms. Number one, we're going to look at Isaiah 14:12 in context. What a novel idea. What's it really about? And number two, let's look at the Hebrew word hallel that the King James Version translates as Lucifer. Again, Hebrew word hallel. Lucifer comes from Latin, which means it comes from the Vulgate, which means it comes from the Catholic Church pre-Reformation, way back in the day. The Vulgate was written by Jerome in Bethlehem, sometime in the 4th century, I believe. Now let's look at the New Revised Standard, and again, let's get some context here. So when Isaiah is writing, this is the 14th chapter, bear with me, and I'll try to read it like I hear Isaiah saying it. Maybe it will help with context. When the Lord has given you, Israel, rest from your pain and turmoil and the hard service which you were made to serve. By whom? Babylon and its king Nebuchadnezzar. That's the bad guy. Okay? You, Israel, will take up this taunt against the king of Babylon. He's telling them, gather and chant these taunts against the king. How the oppressor has ceased. How his insolence has ceased. How you are fallen from heaven, O day star, son of dawn. How you are cut down to the ground, you who laid the nations know. This is what Isaiah wants Israel to yell at Nebuchadnezzar. Oh, how you've fallen. It's a prophecy of the fall of Babylon and their release from captivity. Right, they're captive. This is the Babylonian captivity, right? During the time of writing of Isaiah.
Mhm.
Get it?
I'm trying to.
All right. So this is the actual verse. It's the only verse in which Lucifer appears, but here it is not translated Lucifer. It's translated day star. That's Venus. Okay. Again, continuing in the next verse. You, the king of Babylon, said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit on the mount of assembly in the heights of Zaphon. I will ascend to the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. Hear the insolence? Hear the arrogance? He's going to make himself like God, this Nebuchadnezzar. the one that's being cut down. But you are brought down to Sheol, the grave, to the depths of the pit, the grave. But you're just going to die like everybody else, Nebuchadnezzar, and your kingdom's going down. You're going to lose everything. Because you made us captive, the Lord, our God, is going to get you. Continuing, those who see you, the king of Babylon, will stare at you and ponder over you or marvel over you. Is this the man who made the earth tremble, who shook kingdoms, who made the world like a desert and overthrew its cities, who would not let his prisoner Israel go home? Is this King Nebuchadnezzar the Great? Look at him now, fallen for messing with God's people. And continuing, Isaiah 14:22, I will rise up against them, says the Lord of hosts. I will cut off from Babylon name and remnant, offspring and posterity, says the Lord. All right. This is written by Isaiah to Israel about their Babylonian captivity and their captor, and it's a prophecy of his fall and their release. That's what this chapter is about. And he uses metaphors to do it in chapter 12. First, how you have plummeted from the skies, O morning star, son of the dawn. Well, you've got a falling star. How you are cut down to the ground, you who hew the nations. Well, you're cut down like a tree. These are things that fall down. Nebuchadnezzar, you're going to fall. You're going to go to the grave. Babylon, you're going to fall. Our Lord will take care of you. Here are the notes from the New English translation, which I like a lot. This whole section of Isaiah 4 through 21 is directed to the king of Babylon, who is clearly depicted as a human ruler. Other kings of the earth address him in Isaiah 14:9 and following. He is called the man in verse 16. And according to verses 19 and 20, he possesses a physical body. These are the notes from New English as well. These verses, Isaiah 14:4 through 21, contain several titles and motifs that resemble those of a Canaanite. And by the way, Canaanite and Babylonian deities tend to be very similar, sometimes using the exact same name. These verses contain titles and motifs they would have recognized as resembling those of the Canaanite mythology concerning Hallel, son of Shachar, the stars of God, the mountain of assembly. Hallel, son of Shachar. This is a Babylonian deity that's also named Venus, named after the star. So this kind of adds more argument for this is not about Satan. Okay, Hallel, son of Shachar, which Hallel is translated Lucifer, but doesn't mean Lucifer. It as I'll show you in a minute. It refers to the stars of God in the Canaanite myth, the mountain of the assembly, the recesses of Zaphon. They're all in the myth. We have this myth. It's in writing in Babylon, and the divine title. Okay, so these verses here in Isaiah reference a real Babylonian mythological story about a minor god, Hallel, son of Shachar, who tried to take over Zaphon, which is the city on the mountain of God, or the gods. In this Babylonian myth, Hallel's attempted coup against the gods failed, and he was hurled down to the underworld, which the Greeks would later call Hades, or Hades. And Isaiah calls on Israel to taunt the falling, failing king of Babylon for having never to be realized delusions of grandeur. He's using their own religion against them, Isaiah is. Isaiah is saying, you're like Hallel, who wanted to be greater than God. And look at you now. Hallel fell from the sky, and so will you. Venus, morning star, high and mighty, bright and beautiful, last forever? I don't think so. Well, back to it. This is C.B. Caird, one of my favorite writers. He did a great commentary that I like on the book of Revelation. He wrote, Hillel tried writing of the god, this is the Canaanite slash Babylonian god Hillel, tried to climb the walls of the northern city of the gods, Zephon, to make himself king of heaven, only to be driven from the sky by the rising sun. In Isaiah 14:12 through 20, the myth of Hillel, it's given a historical application. The part of Hillel is played by the king of Babylon who has tried to rival God. That's precisely what I'm saying. He's using the fallen, pagan, mythological god of the Babylonians, playing the role of Nebuchadnezzar, the failed king of Israel, of Babylon, who had captured Israel and is going to be punished and fall. This is a prediction of his fall. So the king of Babylon on the left, Isaiah 14, what's it about? Well, it's about the king of Babylon. Isaiah is prophesying the fall of King Nebuchadnezzar II, or Nebuchadnezzar the Great, who reigned 605 to 562 BC, and was the lord of one of the disasters of Israelite history, which is the destruction of Jerusalem and the deportation to Babylon of Israel's brightest and best. Over on the right, Hillel ben Sakar, that's a god. That's an actual picture of the god. Isaiah compares Nebuchadnezzar's fall from power to the fall of the day star, son of the dawn, a Canaanite god who fell in prideful rebellion against the chief gods. It's a metaphorical parallel. It's like the fall of the Japanese empire could be compared to the setting of the sun, as opposed to the rising sun on its flag. The Japanese empire losing World War II set like the evening sun. It's a metaphor. He's using the god to represent the king of Babylon and predict his demise and failure. So the Hebrew word Satan, all right, it's when it's used as a common noun, like in 1 Kings, it says God raised up another adversary against Solomon. His name was Rezin, son of Elida. So it can just be a common noun. But Job uses it to refer to someone specific. Job 1:6 reads, one day the heavenly beings, literally the sons of God, came to present themselves before the Lord, and the Satan also came among them. And it's pronounced Satan, and it means adversary. In other words, it's like the prosecuting attorney in the court. They came before the court of God's justice, prosecuting attorneys there. He brings charges against Job. Job brings charges against God. There's a big courtroom fight. That's what Job is, essentially. It's a courtroom battle. Now, here's the word Satan. It occurs 27 times in the Old Testament. 19 times it just means some adversary, any adversary, the adversary. 8 times it means an adversary. I don't see it being used any as a proper noun. It means the adversary. And by the way, in the Hebrew, the word the is in front of Satan and it's not capitalized. So it could mean literally his title, the title of this particular heavenly being was the Satan. That was his job. He was the adversary. Okay, so in BC, before Christ, how do we get Lucifer mixed up with the idea of Satan? So in the 500s BC, Isaiah, using the Hebrew language, wrote Hillel, which means morning star, also a Canaanite god. And then in the 250 BC, the Greek Septuagint had to translate that as something into Greek. And so for Hillel, they wrote Hiosporos, and that means dawn bringer. It also happens to be the name of a Greek god, so they liked using that for that reason. But then here comes Enoch, first Enoch in 100 BC, in this non-biblical book, and creates fallen angels and all that mess. Okay, that's BC. It's not in the Bible. Now, AD, Revelation 12:9, written around 95 AD, has a vision of the dragon. The dragon is, in this vision, is a symbol for evil, or the Satan, the adversary, the one who stands against the human race and accuses it. Okay, and his angels are cast out in this vision. Is this a vision of something that's already happened, something that is happening, or something that is going to happen? Well, I'll leave it to John to tell us that in another study, but remember, it's a vision. And the vision is about Jesus Christ. It's not a vision about John or about the future. It's specifically, it does predict the future in a way, very different way than maybe most people think. But anyway, that's a different subject. Okay, 400 AD, this is what's important for Lucifer. They wrote the Vulgate, the Latin Vulgate. Jerome translated the Greek and Hebrew into Latin so they could read it in the churches in Latin. And the Latin word that they chose for Heosphoros is Lucifer. It means morning star, son of dawn, both also Roman gods. And then in 400 AD, also Augustine, thank you, Augustine, for another error. We love you nonetheless, but he called Satan Lucifer, proclaiming him a prideful fallen angel in his writings. Then in King James Version, in 611, they capitalized the L. Lucifer became the devil in 611 with the King James Version, basically reinforcing it as a name for Satan. And then in 1647, we have Milton's Paradise Lost. Lucifer is a fallen angel who rebels. It's just picking up in fiction with what Augustine and the Vulgate, Jerome and the King James Version had already began to develop in terms of that era. So how Lucifer was mistaken for Satan. From 382 to 405 AD, the Latin Vulgate translated by Jerome in Bethlehem, Isaiah 14:12, Quomodo, I can't pronounce it all, but you can see that Lucifer is there for Hallel, which is the morning star, the Babylonian god. And there's Venus. Nice picture taken by one of our satellites that we sent out there, one of our probes. And so the word Lucifer, notice the lowercase l, is a pairing of the Latin lucem and fere, meaning light bringer. I can't pronounce Latin very well. I learned a little in music school. Light bringer was a name for the morning star, which is actually not a star at all, but the planet Venus. So how did we get the idea about Satan falling like lightning? Okay, so here are two verses that have been completely conflated from the old, one's from the old and one's from the new. Both wrong, both conflated. It's a mess. Okay, so just look at the one on the left and see it for what it is, and you can use the pictures to guide you. Like the day star and trees falling. Isaiah 14:22, how you have fallen from the heavens, O morning star, son of dawn, how you are cut down to the ground, you who mowed down the nations. This is a metaphor of falling stars and falling trees. Now, we have Jesus speaking in Luke 10. The 70 disciples returned with joy from their missionary journey, which was successful. They healed people. They taught people. And they said to Jesus, Lord, in your name, even the demons submit to us. And Jesus said to them, I watched Satan fall from heaven like a flash of lightning. See, I have given you authority to tread on snakes and scorpions and over all the powers of the enemy. So what's the major power of the enemy that's at stake here? People are sick, and he gave them the power temporarily to heal on that journey, right? So what are the metaphors in this one? Well, it's not falling. It's striking. Lightning strikes. Snakes strike. Scorpions strike. Stars fall. Trees are felled. They're not similar, but they've been conflated in people's minds. Watching Satan fall from heaven like a flash of light. Instead of saying shooting star, he said fall. that brought over the fall of the star and the tree, and they assumed the connection with the star, and then suddenly we've got Lucifer in Luke, and he ain't there. In fact, he ain't even a he. He's a Babylonian god. He's a planet, and he's a myth, not Satan. So here's the nail in the coffin. Kings were known for cutting down their trees and leaving waste wherever they went. And Nebuchadnezzar references this in one of his writings, that he did that very thing. He bragged about all of the cedars that he cut down. Isaiah spoke of the cypresses, exulting over the fallen king of Babylon, the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since you were laid low, no one comes to cut us down anymore. Hear the trees talking. We're glad the king of Babylon fell, because he won't fell us now, and our children, our little baby trees are going to be fine because he's gone. Follow?
Hmm.
All right, so Lucifer gets about a third of the translations from Darby to Webb. Notice most of them are in blue, which means that they're old, between 120 and 426 years old to be specific. And they all hug around the King James Version, and Darby and Dewey Rames and Geneva, and they all followed suit. Shining One, hello, got translated as Shining One by some of these, including Young's literal. Day star by a few, morning star by a few, shining star by one. As I've shown, putting Lucifer in there with a capital L doesn't make any sense, but our oldest translations do that because they're leaning heavily on the Latin. Protestants don't use Latin in worship last time I checked, but I'm just saying. Okay, so I guess I'm kind of done. This is about versions of the Bible, but so I guess that's that. I am going to unscreen, stop the share, and we can have a discussion, I hope. All right, I can see Gino has sent me something from Britannica. Lucifer, fallen angel, morning. Oh, is it bad?
No, it goes along with what you said.
It says what I said? Okay. Hey, Mike, how are you? Perhaps you are sunburned. Are you sunburned, Mike?
Got too close to the morning star.
I think he stepped out for a little snack. So, share your responses, please, to the video and questions. Let's see what we can do with this. How did this happen? And you think I'm right?
What percentage do you think you're right in this?
100?
Don't hold back. Say what you really think.
I'm 100%. I did this study myself. I studied the words in the original language. I'm not a biblical scholar in the technical sense of the word of having a PhD in it or something, but I'm good. I know what I'm doing. And I've shared facts with you that I got from major sources and writers like C.B. Caird. Doesn't get much bigger than that. He agreed with me. So I'm 100%.
Hey, Bert.
Hey, Mr. Miguel.
Sorry I couldn't talk. There was an extra step in getting into this because I came in when I did, maybe. That there was a note saying we were being live streamed, and there was a response I didn't realize I had to do before I could turn on my sound or my video.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
we talked about Lucifer back in 20 or somewhere around 2020, back when we were doing the COVID stuff. But
yeah, I remember.
but it keeps coming up. It's like
Yeah.
You know, and learn, and you can't learn something just looking at it one time. You really kind of have to repeat it. And
Yeah.
some people who come today weren't even in the church, and I didn't even know Kathy back then. You know, so and Kia is fairly new in some regards. I don't think she was there when we did that first study. Maybe she can remember or not, but it was 2020 during COVID. If she was here then, she might have seen it. Gino, you saw it, but I don't know if you remember or not. You've seen some of that before, right?
Yeah, and it's stuff that's come up and other things. It just amazes me the stuff that has kind of been reinvented in the last 2 centuries by certain branches of the Christian faith that does not predate the ancient stuff, but they believe they're right. You know, the whole there's a lot about the Anabaptist movement, you know, where they're anti-creedal. Never mind the fact the creeds got us here. They're anti-Catholic. Never mind the fact that the Catholic and Orthodox and Coptics got us here for 1,700 years. You know, and it's the same like with this. They're not studying as much as they're reading and buying into modern culture of some of this stuff, whether it's Lucifer, angels, like we talked about this morning, hell, damnation, salvation, et cetera, and so forth. And so we're swimming against the current of the last 200 years, and it's really permeated much of the Protestant faith.
Well, if you're right, I mean, 200 years. A lot's happened in these 200 years. First we got the telegraph, and then we got the telephone and the radio, and then we got the TV, and then we got the internet. Man, if we've got something wrong, we can spread it fast.
You think people want to believe in Satan because they want to blame somebody for their evil thoughts?
Well, I mean, that's I mean, I think so. I think there's truth to that, but I mean, I think most people believe it because everybody else they know does.
I mean, I've had somebody say, well, Jesus put love in my heart. The devil put evil in my heart.
Well, we didn't get around to it this morning, but I thought about that during the study this morning about the ways in which that Satan is awfully convenient to bring in as a balancing act for God. You've got good, you've got evil, you've got God, you got the devil. And, you know, they're a balancing act. They're battling one another. They're equal and opposite. Think about what you're saying. Evil and good are equal and opposite in the eyes of God. Are they really equal? Is Satan, if he exists as an entity, is he equal with God, really? I heard a saying one time that, you know, Jesus is voting for you and Satan is voting against you, and you cast the deciding vote. It's so polarized, unintegrated, segregated, divided. And when you divide God like that, what are you doing?
So it matters more what I think than God.
Well, it sure is a
Well,
polarizing,
who needs
sad
Jesus and who needs
theology.
grace?
What happened to God is all in all. Whatever happened to about we live and move and have our being in Christ? Whatever happened to He created everything. We live and move and have our being in Him. All things were made in and by and for and through Him. He is the pre-existent Word of God who created all things that exists, and nothing that exists was made without His hand. But what happened to all that? Suddenly now we've got Satan's as strong as Jesus. Well, how'd that happen? And who is this
Steroids.
Satan? You know? You know, I go back to what Jesus said about evil. It's all evil. He said, I didn't. All evil comes from the human heart.
But yet we have Satan worshipers.
Yes, we do. And they're, so be it.
Crazy.
Well, I mean, in its most benign form, it's just silly like astrology, but some of those people are criminal. You've heard the bad things they do to pets and even in rare cases, babies. So let's not go there. I think those people are evil enough that they don't need help.
So in 78, there was a class offered at South Alabama in Mobile called Witchcraft and Demonology. And looking for an interesting literature class, I took it. It was, and I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he had a PhD from Emory in theology
Uh-huh.
and another one in psychology.
Uh-huh.
And so we started, if I remember correctly, with 30 in the class because they thought it was going to be, fun and Ouija boards and games and Rosemary's Baby and all that jazz. And 5 of us took the final
Wow.
because he came at it from a theological and historical perspective and used a lot of modern literature, but we read Milton and we read Dante and he
So
said,
they wanted a thrill up their spine, not facts.
yeah, they wanted to watch the Exorcist movie and watch somebody's head spin around and worship Satan and maybe have a naked party somewhere. But that was down at Fraternity Row and they could do that anytime.
I thought you were supposed to go to university to learn.
I learned.
I'm glad you did. Wow, man.
I still got some of those books on my bookshelf.
Yeah.
Malleus Maleficarum.
That reminds me of the credit course I took on Revelation. Well, that was a trip. He was asking people what their experiences. He asked us to read the whole thing in one sitting before the first class or second class. And boy, you should have heard the responses. It was just the room was alive with as many different responses as you can imagine. I said, well, I thought it was kind of funny. You've got earthquakes destroyed everything. Then you got the plague destroys everything. Then the pestilence destroys everything. Then the armies destroy everything. And everything's destroyed and destroyed. And then it hailed. I think the hail was superfluous, don't you think? I mean, a little unnecessary.
How many plagues do we need?
I mean, I was making a joke. They thought it was funny, but maybe y'all don't. I thought it was kind of funny. I mean, if you pile it on, all the things that are going wrong, and then, then it hailed. Oh, that's the worst of all?
Hell, you said.
I thought the hail was the warm-up act to the tornado.
So I think what was surprising for me, and I know we talked about Lucifer and Satan before, I don't remember it in this light, because when you read the verses from Isaiah 14, and Satan speaking of King Nebuchadnezzar and not referring to Lucifer or Satan, I don't think I'd heard that.
It jerked the rug out from under your.
Yeah, that was really new for me today to hear that. So I was trying to really listen. So whether the word or the name Satan or Lucifer is not valid in those terms or in those scriptures, in the verses, I believe there is evil in the world.
Mhm.
And I believe that evil is in mankind. And the influence here, I'm thinking about the temptation too, and just how we are tempted to do evil things.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I believe it's in our heart.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe this force of evil is in the world. I think I know that God is all powerful. I know that God, I don't see God and Satan as equal. But I do see them as polar it's opposite, quite opposites, but they are not. It's almost like oil and water. Like they're just where light shines up, the darkness has to dissipate, so to speak. And so I think evil is among us, but I think that light overpowers and God's spirit reigns supreme, regardless of the evil among us, around us, or in our hearts.
Yes, good, yeah.
But the Nebuchadnezzar thing, I'm still trying to stick with, because I've never heard that where we talking about the lightning fall from heaven, because I've always learned that Satan was a fallen angel from heaven, And people would say he was a choir director and he got kicked out of heaven and and all that, and that's why Satan shows up in the choirs all the time. So different things we hear over our lifespan of what I have heard. But
I heard some of the same things. I just didn't
yeah.
hear I didn't hear it from my dad that I recall. I heard it and read it, from my friends and from books, like The Late Great Planet Earth, etc. And also Lucifer is in every other movie, it seems. It seems like it's one of the favorite Hollywood names
I mean, there's a
for the
series
evil
out
one.
called Lucifer, the guy Lucifer,
Yeah.
which represents evil. But I think people gonna find a name for it if they don't know what it's called or what is this. It's easy to say Satan as we know it because of how he was described growing up from a child in Sunday school. They would talk about the devil, with a pitchfork and red horns and all that, And I believed that for most of my childhood, and as I became adult, then I know he was not
It's in our cartoons.
dressed in that. Ooh.
It's in our cartoons. I mean, whenever the devil shows up in the cartoon, he's dressed in a little red suit and he has a little red pitchfork.
Well, I don't think that's how he shows up, not in our lives today, and I don't believe that anymore.
I said
But
cartoons.
yeah, but I'm saying, but I believe there is an evil force in the world, and however it might come in the form of a pastor, come in the form of a
But
child.
does that contradict what Jesus said about all evil coming from within the human heart? You're saying there's an evil force out there. I know there's evil in the heart, but then there's also a force out there.
I think they're both. Evil's in
yeah.
the world. It's
I think-
around us, and
I think
it's in our
most
heart.
Christians kind of feel that way.
You don't think it's a
I
force
have
out there?
changed my mind. No, I don't. I think that the force can be systemic in the sense that when humans get together, their organizations are just as evil as their hearts, have the propensity to do enormous harm that one individual could never do alone. So there's a kind of group evil, political evil, if you will, social evil, working against what is right and good, and thus our call to be forces for good in society. Not only as Christians, but if we want to be a good nation, maybe we should be a good friend to our neighbors. And if somebody starts bombing London, maybe we should help them, which we did in the 1940s. And that's evil. When you're taking over all of Europe and you're killing 6 million Jews, that's evil.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean, now when I say Grim Reaper, I mean a metaphor, a cartoon for death. So when I use the name Satan, I'm using it as a cartoon for the existence of human evil, both individually and corporately.
So where do you put demon possession?
The individual acts, symptoms of evil in the earth. You can be mental illness, it can be physical illness, whatever it is. And demons can be a way of a demon, just like the Grim Reaper can be a symbol or a personification of death. Satan or the devil, the Satan or the devil can be a personification of evil. And I have looked at every single reference. I know there are probably people listening right now who think that I'm out of my mind, but go back and watch our videos. I went through every single reference to Satan, the devil, the evil one in scripture. They're all on those videos on YouTube. Bert Gary, BERT space GARY, and look for the listing. How you can do them in subgroups. What's it called? Playlist. I got a playlist just for Satan.
Yeah.
Just watch them. Just watch them. If you're curious.
I have something that may help, Bert.
Okay.
I was just thinking about like in the Garden of Eden, the knowledge of good and evil is the forbidden thing, right? With
the knowledge of good and evil, not knowledge.
Yeah, knowledge of good and evil, right.
We call
And
people who can't tell the difference between good and evil sociopaths or
right,
psychopaths. So I'm assuming what they're referring to is our conscience being born. When she was tempted and when he was tempted, and this was a metaphor for wanting to understand the difference between good and evil. But then when you get a conscience, do you really? You're just tormented by guilt and shame and uncertainty.
So where did
well,
the
that's what
temptation
I was,
come from, though?
yeah, I was going to say that you know, when you gain the knowledge of good and evil, you have to there has to be enough integrity within your being to withstand that. Like if you've got a lot of wounds that, you know, wounds can make power just be the most euphoric thing in the world. And like corruption, people become corrupt, and absolute power brings absolute corruption.
Well, I think that's probably what Charles Manson pulled off with his girls. You know, they were so euphoric
Exactly.
because they perceived him as giving them divine power.
Exactly. So the more you can see that is really, really true, you start to have this surge of power. But and if you cannot maintain humility in the seeing of that, then that, it
Then you
just take
judge everybody.
yeah, it just takes off, and you try to get more and more powerful, and there's just no end to it.
And it's okay to use other people because they're subhuman to you in a way.
Yeah, so love is out of the picture. And of course, love, that's what God's all about. That's what Jesus is all about. And you lose connection to that by, going for the power. And so it's actually a lie. It's the deception that kind of creates the devil. That when there's deception going on, that's when there
Yeah.
there's a lack of integrity, in other words.
Paul said that Jesus did not cling to equality with God. He didn't cling to power. He gave it away.
Right, right.
The word he used was kenosis. It means he emptied himself of equality with God in order to be human and in
Yes.
order to save us.
And that's so hard to grasp. It's just really hard. You got to look deep to find
Yeah,
the
sometimes learning God is sort of an exercise in standing on your head.
yeah.
We begin with omniscient and omnipotent, that's where our minds go. We don't go,
Power.
we don't go Jesus hugging kids.
Yeah.
Fear the Lord.
We go
Yes.
omni, omni, omni.
Yes. And that's us becoming actors, trying to be something we're not.
Mike, that is so good. Because that's
We're
the Greek word in the Bible is hypocrite
hypocrite. Exactly.
for an actor.
Exactly.
And that was the biggest problem Jesus had with the leadership in Jerusalem. They were phonies pretending with pretend power. Well, they had real power, but he dismantled that pretty quickly.
Yep.
Until he decided to give up his life, he bested them in every argument.
Yep. Yeah, the humility. I can always feel it if I'm starting to lose humility. And then I'm like, oh no, that's not good. And,
Oops,
and
oops, I did it again.
it's so true. If you can catch it, the sooner you can catch yourself, the more pain and suffering you will save yourself.
Oh,
In my culture, we say, "There I am, but for the grace of God." There I am,
It's true.
meaning that God killed other people because he cares less about them than he does about me.
What?
There I go, but the grace of God. So God saved me, but it didn't save the other people that the tornado hit. I don't like that
Yeah,
cliche. I'm
yeah,
sorry. I'm
yeah,
picking on you, but I don't like that
yeah,
cliche.
yeah.
I know Gene doesn't like it.
No, I was referring to what Mike said in terms of yeah, about the humility and non-humility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, when I say I'm 100% right, I think on this, I'd say so with all humility.
It doesn't sound like,
What would it be like if, we as Christians are supposed to spread the good news of Jesus? What if we also said there was no Satan and people actually believed it? Would it change the world?
I think that it's not the place to start, but I think you have to go there eventually if you're going to take people's questions seriously because they've been hammered with hell. They've
I
been
know.
hammered with evil, a torturer, a Satan, if you will. They're terrified or they're laughing it off, thinking that religion is the biggest joke ever. So, I mean, there's hardly a conversation. There's not a lot of room to share except for our common human experience. And our common human experience is that sometimes pastors in the church pass out bad information that do harm. And we need to acknowledge that. We also need to acknowledge as we study and teach is that we're not 100% right all the time. We're doing our best to be accurate and factual. We're not telling you what to believe. We're showing you some skills and tools with which to do exegesis to understand what you're reading. Because if we can't read that stuff for you, well, sometimes we can. I mean, if I put it on the screen, but
Kathy, you can get away with preaching hellfire and damnation in almost every church.
but
I
don't
know.
say there's no Satan.
It's true.
You'll
But
get crucified. You'll get crucified and pilloried for preaching grace and mercy. By the way, there's no Satan and not hell as you understand it either.
I mean, anything different than the norm, you're canceled. I mean, look at Carlton Pearson. Carlton Pearson believed, in his later years that there's no hell, and he was ostracized from the church. And yeah, he had no more affiliation, as far as I read, I guess, with any of his churches and friends, and a lot of people left him, and they talked about him when he died about a month ago. Really, really bad in the media. I mean, because he was really popular, but when he changed his theology, and that will happen, anything around, especially the norm, because if it sounds unfamiliar or I'm just hearing this for the first time, it's like, I call it heresy and nonsense. When I first heard Bert with a lot of stuff, I still question things. I'm not 100% on some things that Bert teaches. I'm still wrestling with it. I still question because that's not familiar to me, and that I've never heard that. Like with the Nebuchadnezzar, to replace the word Satan. I'm like, what? So I'm still wrestling with that, but I'm just in general, people don't tend to just anything familiar, especially with someone coming from someone who they've trusted all their lives. Why would they not tell me the truth? So it's like it's so hard to get, to undo a lot of that embedded stuff.
Right.
I mean, I can write about a book about embedded stuff, embedded theology particularly. And so I think, like Bert said, to leave it to people to, we got to work on our own salvation with fear and trembling and with curiosity, I would add, and with really deep interest in really wanting to know the truth and not just to have a knowledge above anybody else. Oh, I got this. I know nobody else knows this but me. I think that's not what we're about here. Is about really getting curious about how does this fit? How do, where, I don't understand, and ask lots of questions.
A lot of people are, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I was just going to ask if people are afraid to look up Satan, but go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, a lot of people, are not used to telling the truth. I mean, a lot of our defenses psychologically, whether conscious or unconscious, are ways of hiding who we are and masking, who we are. And if you don't even know you're doing that, then how do you even get to the truth? You don't know who you are yourself, much less anybody else.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a journey, having to get through all that to really heal and be able to see what the truth is.
Yeah.
Yeah, when the truth came to the earth, we crucified him.
There you go. That's exactly right. And that's called
And they said he
projection.
healed by the prince of demons.
Yeah, that is projection. We actually were projecting onto him what we
Our illness.
see in ourselves. Yeah.
Mm.
And he took it, said, okay, it's gonna be painful, but you'll get through it.
Mm.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, by the way, Satan is always with a almost always with a the Satan. It's not capitalized in the Hebrew, and it means the accuser. Diabolo or diabolos, the devil,
Mm-hmm.
diabolos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, the the one who can't not lie, the slanderer.
But who's the accuser? What is the role of the accuser?
Satan.
Yeah, but what's the role of the
Accuse you of things that you did or didn't do.
Prosecutor in a trial.
Yeah, prosecutor accusing you of stuff.
Who is it who brings charges against God's
So you're
elect? It is
saying
God who
then there is,
testifies.
I'm sorry, Gene.
I'm just saying, the quote, who is it that will bring a charge against God's elect? It's God who testifies, Romans.
Yeah.
So it's a veiled reference to that concept of the prosecutor trying to drag us down. Nothing
like
can separate us.
he's the pastor at Lafayette, and there's probably somewhere near him in Nashville, the prosecutor in a courtroom.
So the role of the accuser is what?
To accuse someone of a crime.
Yeah, but I'm talking about in this context we're talking about. So okay, let's say if
Satan is
the
not
name
in
is,
Isaiah. We're talking about Isaiah 14, and he's not in there. We think he is, but it's Venus. It's a Babylonian god. It's not Satan.
so the accuser is not an Isaiah.
No, the accuser is I'm just giving the definition of the word. Ha-Satan. The Satan means the accuser. That's what the phrase Ha-Satan means, the accuser.
So
It doesn't say the Jesus anywhere, or the Peter, or the Mary. It says the accuser almost every time. And when it doesn't, it's not referring to a person, it's referring to what someone did.
The Ohio State University.
Huh?
The Ohio State University.
Yeah, the University of Georgia. Bulldogs, go dogs.
Whatever.
I follow them only marginally. I follow them when they're winning. When they lost that game to Alabama, I was like, okay, no longer interested. How's that for a fair weather fan?
Hmm.
Well, Kia, what's on your heart and mind, if you don't mind? And then I think Kathy wanted to say something.
Go ahead, Kathy.
No, you go ahead, Kia. I may be wrong.
Okay, I was present when we had this conversation before, and I still have the same premise, basically, is that not you as an individual, but as an individual giving a message, you're giving it subjectively. And that subjection is always going to be based off of what you traditionally have been told or taught. And it doesn't, typically, it's not accurate. And when you don't have the accuracy and you're giving it to others, they don't know the wherewith of how to research the information, just like the individual giving it didn't research it before they gave it, and then the individual before that, and the individual before that. So it leads to a conglomeration of confusion, basically, and represented information of which gets passed down from generation to generation. And that is what's hard to break, that repetition of inaccurate information.
I think it's as hard, probably at least as hard to break as it is to start using your turn signal if you never have, or or something along those lines. Or like people don't seem to know what flashing lights mean. It's like, you get to a flashing red light and everybody's confused, and then it's yellow. It turns yellow and nobody goes. I'm like, does anybody know what these traffic signals mean? Well, they don't, because I mean, it's either changed over time or they just never learned it. Or, I mean, once you've established how you drive, it's very difficult to move off that default setting and learn a new way. It's like trying to learn stick, when you're older and you didn't learn when you were a kid, like I did. It's harder when you're older. It's hard to unlearn that way of driving. It's hard to remember how to, you have to kind of get a feel between the balance between that clutch and that accelerator.
Gas. Yeah.
And if you don't practice that, you can't drive stick. Well, we're driving stick around here at Owl Rock and Lafayette, I think, is what I'm saying. We're going manual.
I think it has context that makes sense to one, because if it doesn't, it wouldn't make sense. It's like you just talking, people
Yeah, but why didn't somebody in somebody's past, and we all were raised in the church probably, and even if not so, those of you who were, I mean, why did no one ever in the last however many years old you are mention that, oh yeah, Isaiah was written 500 years before Jesus, and oh yeah, it wasn't about him or Satan. Oh yeah, it was written by Isaiah for the Israelites who were in captivity. And it was a prophecy against Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. I mean, could somebody have said that and we forgot it? Or could somebody please start saying that? How did we get here? It's hard to remember to turn on your turn signal when mama didn't teach you to do it when you were 15.
So are you saying then with the adversary, okay, let's forget the word Satan for right now. So the adversary, as in the temptations, for instance, is an influence of evil or force of temptation, like we're tempted today?
I didn't say that.
But that's a question.
No, it's an experience, not a source. We experience evil coming from our hearts and what we do individually and collectively. We're eaten up with evil. And we can't resist it like Jesus did. We needed somebody to do it for us. Does that help?
So Jesus was tempted, yes, and
because he had a human heart,
right,
and he knew what was in it because he had one. That's how he knew all evil came from it, because he had one.
So I think we are in agreement then that there is evil in the world, and there's evil influence that tempts us and this other stuff. When we, I don't know if I use the word allow, but because that's not the right word I want to use. But I mean, it can overpower us.
Yeah, we're weak.
Yeah.
It can we can lie to ourselves and believe it.
Okay.
So, I mean, one way you could talk about the temptations of Christ is that an actual malevolent being showed up while he was fasting in the middle of nowhere and asked him those specific questions. And or you believe that he was tempted from within, and that the Satan figure is the accusing, tempting, slandering voice that's in the human heart, pressing him to the edge of what he can handle.
I think both. I think we experience both.
No, I don't. I think they're mutually exclusive. I think you have to pick, but I'm not sure about that. Let me think about it. And either he's a malevolent entity or he's not. either we're tempted by a malevolent entity or we're tempted from within our own
I can't
hearts.
hear you.
So I think
What did Becky say?
Speak up.
Was she speaking to me?
If
Us?
if Jesus was divine, how could he have evil in him?
The human heart's evil, that is my best answer.
Emptied
He
himself.
just did not, he knew what it was saying, he just told it to shut up.
I think he knew intimately the woundedness of the human heart, and that it's just everybody's got wounded hearts from things
Yeah.
that have happened in their life.
I agree, and you may be coming down sort of on the side with me of, I don't want us to take sides. You may be coming down on the side of Satan not being an entity, but the reality of evil spoken of metaphorically personified. Evil personified, like Grim Reaper is death personified, turned into a person by our imaginations. Another voice, a voice from outside instead of from within. There are people who believe that, and I think as Christians we have to make room for that. I mean, there are people who believe that Satan is a personal entity, and there's room in my world for people who believe that, because most Christians do, from my experience. I'm not one of them. I have studied every single time he showed up in the Bible, and I don't see a personal entity. I see human evil. I see crap that comes from the human heart.
so. I think what you're saying then, Bert, is in line with the scripture that says we're drawn away of our own lust and enticed.
Well, that would certainly be true, I think.
When we're drawn away of our own lust, I forgot what verse it's found.
So
what book it's found in.
who's speaking when Satan says, I will give you all the kingdoms of this world if you will bow down and worship me? Okay, is that an entity speaking, or is that a voice inside of Jesus that says, I have it within the power to ask my Father for these kingdoms of this world, and I'm tempted to do it? Because I could end world peace, I could have world peace, we could end war, we could end strife,
Hunger.
we could end hunger, we could end religious war,
I just had a flash memory, Bert, as you said that, of Galadriel in the Lord of the Rings, when she's tempted when there's a moment when she could reach out and get the ring, and she has this demonic experience
to stop herself.
Yeah, you remember where I'm talking about? And then she passed the test. She was able to pull back out of it and not take it. And it was, she had to bring herself back to humility, is essentially what I believe.
It's a good scene.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
I
good
thought,
symbolism in that movie. It's thought provoking.
yeah. It just struck me as you were talking about that, though, because
Yeah.
whatever we feel, is going on, that's what's real to us. It's, even if it's a dream, we're terrified of dreams because that is our reality. Even if we're asleep, it's your reality, what you are truly experiencing.
Yeah.
And
I've heard people say almost something to the effect, Mike, that evil Satan, how do I put this?
you lost it. It's all
No,
right.
it's just complicated.
Oh, okay.
I think people think that that the way you go to hell is you don't believe it exists. So, I mean, have you seen that circular thinking that people do, and they feel satisfied, but it's completely circular, which means illogical, but it's like, oh, you don't believe in hell? Well, you're definitely going. That's completely circular. So the way you get to hell is by not believing there's a hell? Well, maybe it's the same sort of with Satan in a way. The way that you get a visit from Satan is you don't believe in him. Maybe that's why people are afraid. It was complicated. I oversimplified it, but
That's good.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I
I
didn't
like
quite,
that.
I haven't quite said that before, and I wanted to
Yeah.
be careful.
Didn't Jesus though, right before he went, wasn't that when he was baptized? Right before he went to the wilderness?
Yes,
And
the affirmation of this
and
is my
God's,
beloved son. Yeah,
yeah,
that
and
was,
maybe
Yeah.
so he got that power that I am
Uh-huh.
God's son and I'm a human, and it hit him that he could really do whatever. And that was a temptation.
well, so
Driven into the wilderness.
why
Yeah.
would temptation cause, why would such great affirmation from God cause temptation?
Well, because he was human. He was fully human too.
And what's he going to do with the power and affirmation that he just got? He,
Yeah.
he needs to think about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
He
But
can
it will
try to
help
become
to overcome.
king.
But
He's gonna
see,
become
so
king.
And he could know that how he's going to die. And he's like,
How do I
it's
do that?
several years off. So why wouldn't I just take over the world? I'm here. I might as well just take over the world.
I could turn stones to bread, feed the world. I could jump from the pinnacle of temple and end all religious strife and unify world religion. I could take all the kingdoms of this world and ban war.
It
but I
was his
think
human
Why
side.
not? Those are all good things. They weren't what he was called to do by God, but he was tempted to do them. He wasn't tempted to do something evil.
Mm-mm.
He was tempted by an evil impulse to do something good that would have been wrong for him.
Mhm.
And I think you made the good point, Kathy, because I think that's why he had just finished fasting 40 days,
Now he was
49
Yes.
praying. And
this
so when the temptation come, it was for him to overcome the tempter, the adversary. I mean, so I think,
it wasn't for show. He was going through
yeah,
hell.
but for us
Yeah.
too, that's why I fast and I pray that it will help me through whatever I need for but the time comes, what I need to go through and get through, that I can resist the temptation, because we are tempted every single day, to make a bad decision, to lie, to cheat, to do all these things. But I think through fasting and prayer, and so I think when we even talked about prayer the other day, and it hit me that it's for us, not necessarily for God, it's for us.
Mhm.
That made so much sense to me, because that was something I had not believed before. I thought it was all about doing it for God, but
Yeah.
not, and so yeah, I think with the temptation, that's how Jesus was able to withstand. And I think it's for example today.
Would you mind an exercise, since we're running out of time, where we each share something we're taking away from tonight that's new or exciting or different? And it doesn't have to be something I said or showed you. It can be something that you thought that came to you. Or it could be something that Mike said, or it could whatever. But could you what'd you take away from tonight? It doesn't have to be a full sentence. Be like, I need to study the Bible more. It could be that. What do you take away?
I didn't know what Lucifer meant.
Well, now you know it means Hillel, the god of the Babylonians, the morning star, Venus.
Yep.
Now you know.
Now I know.
What'd you take away?
I think my takeaway is wrestling with whether the evil force is out there or is it just within us, or is it both? So
That is great. I mean, I think if other people are experiencing that, I think that's really cool.
I
Is
agree.
evil something, an external person,
mhm,
malevolent personality, being, or is it from within
mhm,
us?
yeah.
It's like I've said a million times, and I said it this morning, and I'll say it again. Remove all the humans miraculously from planet Earth right now, and then point to evil. You can't. We're gone.
So true. And I watched some little videos of Carl Jung with mom when I was there this past weekend, and it was said about him that he was really good at looking at the darkness in himself, and that in his mind, there was no one he could see as more evil than he was. And he would look any bad thought of any kind, he would look at it,
He's
face
worse than
it,
everybody else.
face it. Yes,
That's
and he-
what the Bible calls an evil conscience, and we all have one. It condemns us when God's not, and religionists use it against us to get us to come more regularly and give more money.
but what he
How's
showed
that for
people,
dark?
right? But what he showed people was that if you can turn and face it and not try to hide everything away and all that, then things come clear and you begin to see the truth, and then you have control, you have power over the evil things, so that they don't come true. They stay in their proper place,
Well, I
away
guess you
from.
could say that Jesus looked deep within himself
Absolutely.
and went right to the bottom of the evil
The
in the
very
human
bottom
heart
of it.
that he had.
The very
And,
bottom
and
of
we're
it.
talking not about a physical something in your cardiovascular system. We're talking about evil intent,
Yep.
meaning not doing God's will, meaning not necessarily doing something that is in and of itself evil, but wrong for you.
Yeah.
You know, ruling all the kingdoms of this world is not in and of itself a bad thing, especially since Jesus is a good guy and could end world wars. But that's not what God asked him to do. He asked
Right.
him to live and to teach and to die for the people.
Humbly, as a servant.
And it is a humbling experience to look deep down. And how many of us have the courage to look as deep
Yeah.
as Jesus did into their heart, right
But
down to the bottom?
But don't you think there are levels of evil? I mean, I know that there is evil within me, but the guy out there that kidnaps children and mutilates them and murders them, that's a level of evil that I don't understand.
Yeah. That's a broken person that can do that kind of thing. You know, intentionally harming others like that. But on the other hand, there have been points in human history not too long ago, perhaps that 200 years we just talked about at the beginning of this session, everything has changed because back then, I mean, you could commit a murder out west and no one would ever find it or accuse you of anything. And so, I mean, I don't know why there weren't more serial killers in the West. Maybe there were. I don't know, but once you get a bunch of crazy people alone in the wilderness, they're liable to do anything, especially if the food runs out.
I mean, they're evil in this world that people would lynch you for the color of your skin. That's the
Just
height
mean, just
of,
mean.
of evil that I don't understand. That's evil, me.
Well, and I don't want to think that the evil in me compares to that kind of evil.
Yeah, well, let's just call it, I don't know, Becky, I don't know if this solves it for you. The way I think about it is, it's like, okay, we're all sinners with a capital S. That's not individual sins like smoking, cussing, drinking, gambling. That's, you know, the disease of the human heart, the brokenness that does the wrong thing, even when you try to do the right thing, you know? And so that's the source. But the individual evil things that we choose to do depend on circumstances and character. And I'd like to think that I would never be capable of the level of depravity you're talking about. Yeah, that is truly the pinnacle of evil to harm children. You
I
see,
know of someone who talks about that, Bert. The guy who came up with internal family systems, Richard
Ellen
Schwartz.
Friedman?
No, Richard Schwartz.
Oh, Schwartz, yeah.
Yeah. And, he talks about that we all have parts within us, not just, you know,
One heart.
yeah, that we have many parts, and a lot of parts, especially with people who've been truly abused from a very young age. They're so broken in the deep down that uh, that the way they try to protect themselves to survive is to become what the abuser did to them, or they would not survive.
Yeah.
they convince themselves. I mean, that's why he wrote a book called No Bad Parts, because deep down, all those parts, they're just, you know, trying to protect themselves, but they don't know how. They're too young. They don't understand how to understand what's happened to them.
Well,
And
internal family systems goes back into the, you know, the shared family crisis and evil. And
uh-huh,
it's a quite the adventure. I think probably you better take a therapist with you because that's some serious stuff.
absolutely.
You gonna let my firefighter come out?
Yeah, firefighter, what else? The
Manager and
manager.
the exiles.
Yeah, the
Exile.
exile, and I've got a critical voice too. Who is that?
Uh, internal critic.
Internal critic. Yeah, that's the one I hate. I'm gonna have to
Uh-huh.
work with him.
Everybody has one of those.
I'm
Mhm.
afraid we've kind of running out of
I
time in
see
between
Renee on the
here.
screen. Renee, do
I
y'all
see
see her?
Renee, and I guess you're in Michigan? Where's she?
Minnesota.
Minnesota? Where's she at?
Hey, I'm Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Hey,
Hey Renee, we're good to hear from you. Good, thank you for being here. Thank you to KC, to Kathy, to Patricia, as
Everyone
always.
didn't say what they're walking away with.
I know we're running out of time though.
Okay.
Does someone else please share? Because I want to hear it before we go. Is there something you're walking away with that you want to share? I want to hear it.
The
Speak now.
wounded healer was more wounded than I thought. The emptying was deeper than I thought. The more I study.
I think I will remember you said that forever.
awesome.
Yeah. Dare we go that deep? Dare we be healed completely?
Yeah. Very good, Gene.
Thank you, Gene. You all have a pleasant evening. On Sunday, Gino's and I will be doing our sermons as usual, we presume, from Lafayette and from Al
As
Rock.
unusual, we
Yeah.
presume.
And so I don't know what he's doing, but he'll be doing it at 11 o'clock Eastern, 10 Central. Our worship services are 10 Eastern. What is that?
Eastern Standing, 10 o'clock.
What is it over in the middle?
Not 9 here.
It's 9 your way, yeah. 9 Central. Okay. Anything else? Gosh, I'm tired.
Gina was really touched by I watched part of your service on Sunday with all the people that fell and the one person that died. I was really broken by that. That just seemed so devastating.
It was shocking and graphic.
Mm.
Hmm.
That funeral's tomorrow for that family in Texas.
Okay.
Prayers for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, praise
Well,
sure.
Patricia's traveling Friday, so remember her, please. She's going down for the funeral of her niece, another one.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Prayers with you.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Yeah. And y'all have a very, very good evening. Thank you for sharing. And if you want to share this, remember all you have to do is click the share button and put it on your wall. Y'all take care.
Mm-hmm.
You
Bye.
too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everybody.